Play action. Bennett looks down the middle. McConkey's wide open. Touchdown, Dogs.
Shoot. My bad. I didn't realize I was live. Oh, gosh. Didn't realize I was live. We're doing Ohio State today. Would you look at that? Well, that's convenient because I'm wearing my Ohio State jersey and I'm thinking about Ohio State right now. And of course, me being a big Buckeye, yeah, of course, they'll stage. We all know that. But yeah, I'm a big Buckeye fan. If you guys didn't know, I mean, look, it's in my blood right here. Great uncle played at Ohio State back in the 70s, same class as Archie Griffin. Grandpa and I, we go to games all the time. I went a few times with my dad, with my uncle. I've gone before. My first ever night game was the Virginia Tech loss that we had back in 2014. And me reacting emotionally as a young kid, being, I believe, 13. I was like, well, we're going to go like 8-4 and play Duke in the Belk Bowl. Well, I don't know if Duke went to the Belk Bowl, but I know for a fact Ohio State did not. That was the only loss they had that year, and Ohio State won the national championship. But that's the last time the Ohio State Buckeyes won the national championship. And Ohio State fans, I know for a fact, are wondering, with how much talent we bring in and how talented we've been and how close we've been, are we going to get that national championship sometime soon? Well, we're going to talk about the chances that Ohio State has of doing that here in 2023. But before I move on, I'm going to let you guys know Georgia Tech and Missouri are both on deck. They'll be posted in the next 24 hours after you're seeing this video. So if they're not already posted, just keep an eye on that. Look up my Twitch there. It's at @bash_LSN, like it is right down here. And it's also on TikTok, the same exact thing at @bash_LSN. And then, of course, we are on podcast, Bash's CFB show. Make sure you check it out. And finally, I'm just going to do one little quick promo. Up there by the Loudmouth CFB logo, that is what you're going to look for. That is the playlist for all of these predictions. This is the 10th. We are in double digits finally now. We are planning on doing about 75, 76 videos to make sure we cap this off. So we still got a long way to go this offseason, but hey, let's keep knocking them out. Let's keep rolling. I like the way that this is going. So make sure you like and subscribe. I know for a fact that I was able to get some traction on that Notre Dame video, but a lot of you guys didn't subscribe, and that's okay. But if you like the Notre Dame video, you're going to like all of these because all of these are the same. And if you're a huge college football fan, just like I am, I'm college football first, Ohio State second, make sure you like and subscribe. So with the Ohio State Buckeyes, we're going to talk about players leaving here, and we're going to start with the transfers. Now, we could talk about key departures a little bit. I didn't even write them down, actually, because, I can just list them off. All right, so transferring out, we have Caleb Burton going to Auburn and Caleb Brown going to Iowa, both of them wide receivers. One offensive tackle also transferring out, Ben Chrisman to Kentucky. And then on defense, they lost edge rusher Javonte Jean-Baptiste to Notre Dame. Daraja Mitchell, a highly touted recruit at linebacker coming in. His career just didn't pan out. Godspeed to him, and hopefully his career has somewhat of a revival at the University of Florida. In the secondary, they lost J.K. Johnson, a younger player with a lot of potential who did not stick it out. He's gone to LSU. And then two safeties, Jansen Dunn off to Kentucky and Jalen Johnson off to Memphis. Some key departures, of course, to the NFL. We know about Paris Johnson Jr. at tackle. I'm also going to highlight DeJuan Jones at tackle and Luke Whippler at center. That's going to be a huge conversation point of this day. We also have CJ Stroud, of course, at quarterback. We'll talk about the quarterback position. Wide receiver wise, it's impactful, but not really because we know Ohio State's receivers, but he's still a really good one in JSN, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. And on the defensive side, guys like Rocket Hickman left. You also had edge rusher Zach Harrison leave. Jerron Cage is gone, and a bunch of other pieces on that defense, but overall, all their crucial pieces are back on defense. And then they brought in some new ones. So we're going to talk about transferring in. So for Ohio State, they added a transfer quarterback in Tristan Gebbia from Oregon State. He started a few games up there. If you follow college football as closely as I do, you are familiar with Tristan Gebbia for sure. So that'll be fun to see. Wide receiver from Notre Dame, Lorenzo Styles is coming in. Now, his brother Sonny Styles is a defensive back, and it's sounding like Lorenzo Styles is going to make that move to defensive back. In fact, I know for a fact he's making that move. He wouldn't come to Ohio State to play receiver because they didn't want him out of high school playing receiver. Two offensive linemen out of the portal, Joshua Simmons coming in from San Diego State. We'll talk about that more later. And then Vic Cutler, he played tackle at ULM, but he is a Power 5 when he's playing Power 5 football. He's a Power 5 interior. On the defensive side, they brought in defensive lineman Tywone Malone from Ole Miss, and then also another young player from Ole Miss, Davison Igbinosun. We'll talk more about him later. And then safety, John Carter comes in from Syracuse, and John Furlman, I think it's Furlman, from Arizona State. He's a long snapper coming in. So John Furlman, a guy to watch out for, the long snapper. Yes. All right, we're going to talk about this Ohio State roster. Now, we're going to start a little bit backwards with wide receivers and running backs because I want to talk about quarterback and offensive line last. So, of course, at wide receiver, we know about Marvin Harrison Jr., Julian Fleming, and Emeka Egbuka. Hey, Colin, what are some names that we don't know? Well, some people might still not be fully familiar with who Xavier Johnson is. He's going to be backing up in the slot, and he's really dynamic. He's played some running back, and he's been awesome in that role. Now, you also have Jaden Ballard, a guy that has elite deep speed. I think he's perfect for that Z. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised, no offense to him, but I wouldn't be surprised if a redshirt sophomore and Jaden Ballard takes that throne from Julian Fleming in that starting spot. Carnell Tate, another freshman, I think is going to get some run. I also believe in the slot, Brandon Innes, if they want to rotate a little bit more, I think he could get some playing time. Noah Rogers is another guy I'm watching out for. I don't know if he's going to play much, but I think in garbage time, maybe he's going to get some reps there. And then Kojo Antwi, one of those sophomores, as we talked about Caleb Burton and Caleb Brown transferring out from Ohio State, is Kojo Antwi and also Keon Graves, who are two guys that stuck around. Just keep that in mind because they are not running away from competition here, and I love to see that. And we know about the tight end, Cade Stover. A lot of you, though, don't know about Joe Royer and G. Scott Jr. Some of you guys know him from that headbutt against Michigan, but a guy I'm watching out for is true freshman Jelani Thurman. He's one of the best tight ends prospects that we have seen in quite a while and come to Ohio State. In fact, I think he is the best that I can recall maybe in my lifetime or in the recruiting era. As far as recruiting rankings go, I should say recruiting rankings era that we have had. So Jelani Thurman, I don't know how much he's going to play as a true freshman, but maybe he's going to get some run. But you do have upperclassmen and G. Scott Jr., Joe Royer, and Cade Stover, and we all know about Cade Stover. The running back room, we also know what this running back room holds. Dallin Hayden, Chip Trainum. But we know Travion Henderson, Mayan Williams, and then also a guy that's not listed on here, Evan Pryor. Dynamic. A lot of people compared him to Curtis Samuel last summer before he blew out his knee. I hope he comes back fully healthy, and I hope he's able to show America what he could do. This running back room loaded. Their skill positions are loaded. We need to talk about the quarterback position. Who's going to be throwing them the ball? Will it be number 6, Kyle McCord, or interesting for Sammy Ball, TCU, shout out, Mr. BJ Loudermilk, Devin Brown wearing 33. It might look weird, but guess what, guys? I have an inkling that Devin Brown is going to be a starter. I'm 60-40 on that. Now, Kyle McCord, I know we can win with him. I know he's probably a really good player. If Kyle McCord has to transfer at the end of this year, though, because Devin Brown's the starter, I hope nothing for the best for Kyle. He's awesome. I love what he brings to the table. I think he's a big arm guy that absolutely can sling that rock, and he's not immobile. That's not the issue. But Devin Brown is an elite athlete. A lot of people were kind of highlighting because of how good of a three-sport athlete or how dominant of a three-sport athlete Lincoln Kienholz was in South Dakota. Devin Brown is exactly or was exactly that for a team in Utah. And so I think Devin Brown as an athlete is an absolute stud. And if he's able to get his accuracy problems that I've heard about down, if he's able to figure out what is going on there, I think that he's going to be the starter. Again, 60-40. Not convinced, but what I am convinced about, Ohio State's fine at quarterback. If Devin Brown is better than Kyle McCord, that means that's a good thing. That's not a shot at Kyle McCord. I have a good read and a good sense of knowledge on what Kyle McCord is. And if Devin Brown is going to play, I know what type of athlete he is. I don't know how he's able to process information, how he's able to read defenses. I don't know how he's even able to consistently throw the ball at a college level. But athleticism and those measurables, something that you cannot essentially teach, but it's something that you can see at least on film. He's got the tools. He's got the athleticism. If he's the starter, he excites me as a potential Heisman contender. Okay? If he's the starter, it's for a reason. I promise you that. Now, we're going to talk about that offensive line. Now, Matt Jones, he's back. That's a great thing. Donovan Jackson, probably the best guard in America. He's also back. Carson Hinsman is a redshirt freshman who really seems to have taken that center spot by storm. Now, I think at center, they're fine because his backup or projected backup is Jacob James. And I do believe Jacob James is also a very serviceable and experienced center. So Carson Hinsman probably going to get the start based on talent alone. But if he's not ready for that role, I think Jacob James could very much play that role. And also an experienced guy, and Vic Cutler coming in from ULM is definitely a guy who could play that role at center. But my guess is Carson Hinsman is going to be the starter. What is Ohio State going to do at tackle? Josh Fryer is going to be a starter. I believe they brought in Josh Simmons to be a starter at tackle. You have Tegra Shabola, you have Zen Michalski, who were really battling for that starting spot, and neither really took the throne. In fact, what I have actually heard was it was those two, and then you had below George Fitzpatrick. And then George Fitzpatrick is here as joining them in that race. I believe that Ohio State's tackle position is great for the future with Luke Montgomery and George Fitzpatrick. I'm not sure still if both of those guys are 1 or 2 years away. Josh Simmons, being a redshirt sophomore, he's technically eligible after this year if he plays super well, but I think he has some time in this program. I think he's got 2 years in this program, if you ask me, before he decides to declare for the NFL if he's the starter. So, and then I think this could be Josh Fryer's one and done year as a starter. He was the 6th offensive lineman last year. Josh Fryer, I'm not sure how good he really is going to be, and it's definitely going to be an adjustment as well for Josh Simmons. The tackle position is definitely a concern, but I don't think it's an overwhelming concern that's going to keep Ohio State away from being a potential national championship contender. We got to talk about the defense, though, because we know that this defense struggled in key moments last year, specifically the Michigan game. Now, we saw them against Georgia, and they had moments against Georgia, but overall, they did not do enough against the Georgia Bulldogs, and they also struggled against Maryland. But before that, they looked like a completely different team from 2021. And guess what? I hate to break it to you, guys, quit being naive to the fact that Ohio State 100% did improve last year. Think about what they had to go through. They had 5 scholarship corners, and 3 of them were injured at the same time. They had to start a true freshman, and God bless them, but they had to start a true freshman out there at outside corner against Wisconsin, and his name is Jair Brown. He's now a true sophomore coming in. They also had to start J.K. Johnson, who's no longer on the roster in that game because Jordan Hancock, Denzel Burke, and Cam Brown could not go. Now, what does that mean for this year? Well, they bring in Davison Igbinosun. They have extra guys because of a guy like Jermaine Matthews and Calvin Sampson-Hunt. Those guys coming in builds depth for this. They have 8 scholarship corners, if I counted right. Ryan Turner, Jair Brown, Denzel Burke, Davison Igbinosun, Jordan Hancock. You have Jermaine Matthews, and then you have so maybe I'm missing one. Jahad Carter can play corner, by the way. So I'm not, and of course, Lorenzo Styles coming in, and you got to factor in. I think the point I'm going to make here with Ohio State is because of that depth being improved at cornerback, their defense is going to be better off. What about the physicality up front? A lot of you might talk about that. Well, Jack Sawyer probably going to play more of an edge rusher rather than that jack position that they had. And I think that could help him a lot. Now, this is a guy that led the team in sacks, but if you watch Ohio State, most of the time, Ohio State or Jack Sawyer got his sacks in garbage time. A guy I really love, I think is a dominant athlete, is Michael Hall Jr. I said he's probably the most talented defensive tackle last year in the Big Ten. Was that true? I think it could have been. And I think that maybe the rotation wasn't there because of run gap filling. But the issue I have with that whole entire thing is Teron Vincent, who started as an experienced guy because he was better in run gap, filling run gaps. Hey, guess what? Guess what? He's the one who missed one of the two big runs against Donovan Edwards in Michigan. He's the one who missed his run gap. The other one was Tommy Eichenberg. It was all on Tommy on the other one. So him paired with Ty Hamilton, who I really like, Tyleik Williams, bringing in a guy like Tywone Malone to add depth, Hero Canoe, Jaden McKenzie to add depth. I think this interior defensive line is really good, and we know the edges are going to be fine because I think a guy that's going to be a rotational piece, as we know that Larry Johnson likes to rotate. Kenyatta Jackson is a guy to watch out for this upcoming year. Is Caden Curry going to be able to take that jump? Well, he's starting to lose some weight from what I hear, and that's big for them. And I think Mitchell Melton, if he's healthy, can also make an impact too. We'll see if Amari Abor is able to do it as well. Now, at the linebacker position, we know about Tommy Eichenberg, Steel Chambers, both back, starting linebackers last year, redshirt seniors, both of them. But Cody Simon, I'm hearing, is taking a massive jump finally in his fourth year. As he flashed when he was younger, he flashed at moments in 2020 and 2021, and he kind of backed off a little bit at the end of 21 and at the beginning of 2022. CJ Hicks, though, is a guy who shines, and I think CJ Hicks is going to get a lot of run and a lot of good playing time. But finally, talking about this defense is going to be completely based on the safeties. And the problem I have here is if you got three cornerbacks who are really, really good, why not play that third cornerback at nickel? And the question is Jair Brown or Jordan Hancock ready for that? I hope they are, because as much as I've heard that Cameron Martinez has improved, do I really believe that Cam Martinez has improved that much to where he can start at nickel? I'm not sure. Now, there is an exception to that rule. You can talk about Jahad Carter playing in that nickel once he gets healthy, fully healthy, and he got injured in the spring. I think he's just about back right now from what I've heard. I think Jahad Carter fits that mold a little bit better if it's not one of the other corners like Jordan Hancock or Jair Brown. So I'm interested to see how that works. I also think that those two deep safeties will be Josh Proctor and Lathan Ransom. I think Ohio State fans kind of overhate Josh Proctor. I think he's a really good player. He's just always looking for that big hit. He got benched against Notre Dame for some stuff that just bothers Jim Knowles disproportionately to some other bad habits that a guy like Lathan Ransom might fall into. But we all know that there is no way they can keep a guy like Sonny Styles off the field. And I'm curious to see if Court Williams will take any reps in the rotation, but it seems like Sonny Styles and Kai Stokes have taken over that rotation. So I think this defense is pretty solid in all three levels. Special teams, bring back punter Jesse Mirko. Also, Jaden Fielding is going to take that kicking duties away. He's definitely a little bit of a bigger leg type of player, but I'm curious to see. This is a little bit of a kicking battle between him and Parker Lewis. We'll see how that all works out. And so I'm not really going to dive deep into special teams. I'm just going to talk about breakout players, ones that I've written down. On the offensive side, watch out for Jaden Ballard, deep threat, and then also Cardinal Tate to maybe get some rotational run, especially since he's been in there since spring. And Brandon Ennis just got on campus. And also tight end Joe Royer is a guy who could step up. Defensively, edge rusher, I talked about him. I think the number 3 edge rusher is Kenyatta Jackson, and I think he's just a freak athlete. Sky's the limit when it comes to an athlete like that on the edge. And a linebacker, CJ Hicks, I think he's the third guy. As much as I do like Cody Simon and like what I'm hearing about Cody Simon, I think it's undeniable that kid needs to be on the field, and I think Jim Knowles has made that clear this offseason. And then finally, cornerback Davison Igbinosun. If you don't know who he is, he was all SEC freshman last year at cornerback for Ole Miss. I think he's going to have a breakout year for Ohio State, and him and Denzel Burke are going to be the best defensive secondary we've seen in a few years. Now, the standard is very high when you try to talk about 2019 secondary, and I'm not going to compare this secondary to that. But I definitely think this is the best secondary that they've had since then, for sure. All right, let's get into the schedule prediction. Over-under is 10.5 wins for Ohio State. Keep that in mind. Let me know down below in the comments section. I'll remind you at the end of the video what you think Ohio State's going to do. I'm going to try to fly through this, okay? So we have the Ohio State Buckeyes schedule right here. They start off on the road at Indiana. Now, traditionally, they have not had too much issue playing against Indiana. This is also going to be on CBS 3:30 in the afternoon. I don't really see too many problems with it. Usually when Ohio State has struggled, it's like a sloppy night or it's in late November. I think they have no problem beating Indiana here. And then you have Youngstown State. I think there's no problem against Youngstown State. Back in the day, even when Youngstown State was playing some pretty good football, they couldn't compete with Ohio State teams that are less talented. I think that this should not be a problem for Ohio State. Now, Western Kentucky, I think they beat Western Kentucky without a shadow of a doubt, but this game is going to make people mad for Ohio State, as this could be a 7-point game or a 14-point game or something like that if they do not take Austin Reed and this Hilltopper squad seriously with this system the week before Notre Dame. And then they have that travel at Notre Dame. Now, if you watch my Notre Dame preview, you know where I'm leaning with this game. Bottom line is this, though. I was and still am like teetering on the brink of being able to pull Notre Dame. The more I look at Notre Dame, the more I think that they have a ton of potential to do really well this year and maybe make a playoff run even, or just go 11-1. I do think Ohio State wins this game because I think they're the more talented team, and I think early on in the season, I think Ohio State's going to be more ready for this big stage than Notre Dame, especially with Ohio State's secondary being improved from my estimation. I think that this Notre Dame offense is going to maybe flutter a little bit, and Ohio State could be first to 24, and I think Ohio State could easily do that. Off the bye, they play Maryland. I think they have no problem beating Maryland in this game. Traditionally, ever since Maryland has joined the Big Ten, they have struggled to play in the horseshoe and play on the road against any of the big three, but specifically in the horseshoe, they have not had a competitive game whatsoever. I mean, if you think back to some of the games that we have seen in the odd years since they joined the Big Ten, again, none of them have been close. That's just the bottom line there. The couple of close games that I can think about last year in 2018, both in College Park, Maryland, I think they have no problem beating a Maryland team that is a little bit down at wide receiver, and I don't trust their athletes on defense. At Purdue would be tough, and again, I picked Purdue to beat us when we went to West Lafayette the last time. I don't think that repeats. I think Ryan Day, who was on staff, he was actually interim coach earlier that year. I think he remembers that night. I think especially if this is a night game, they're going to be ready for it. Purdue trying to be the spoiler makers here in this situation, but I am not going to call that right here, right now. I think that they have a little bit of a rebuild, a slight rebuild, not much of one, but it could take a couple of years for Purdue to get back to that Big Ten. Well, I guess there's no Big Ten West, but back to that top half of the Big Ten. I think this year they're going to take a step back and to slide down, and I think they won't be able to compete with the Ohio State Buckeyes this season. But it is the game right before Penn State. And I think that Penn State's a really, really good team. I think they have Ohio State's full attention, especially going into this game, which is what makes that Purdue game slightly more dangerous than it would otherwise be. I think Ohio State will beat the Penn State Nittany Lions, but listen here. This secondary might be one of the best, if not the best, in America. They're specifically really deep. Kalen King is a really good player, but can he and the other DBs like Johnny Dixon, for example, can they cover these wide receivers all game? And if they can, how's that front seven going to hold up against the run? This will be a nice, interesting film study when you talk about Penn State versus Ohio State. Regardless on result, it will kind of prepare you for what to expect between Penn State and Ohio State, Penn State and Michigan, but also later in the season when Ohio State plays Michigan. Now, all bets are off when Ohio State plays Michigan, so a little bit less there, but Penn State, watch out for the little matchups that you can find in that game entertaining. at Wisconsin. Ohio State dominated Wisconsin last year. I don't think that's going to happen again, but I still think that their athletes on offense compared to Wisconsin's athletes on defense, I think they're going to have a problem keeping Ohio State under 40 points, even in Camp Randall, especially if this is not a night game. And then I also want to bring up the fact that Ohio State, they had that game in 2011. I know they haven't really struggled at Wisconsin since then. They've won some big games there, won some night games. Remember that double overtime thriller in Madison in 2016. See, this Wisconsin Badgers squad that they have this year, a lot of people are talking about this air raid, and I don't think they're going to throw the ball around the yard. And I don't trust Tanner Mordecai to go up against a secondary, like I said, will be very much improved. I like their receivers somewhat. Shamir DK, Skylar Bell, both back. But I don't think they really compete here. And neither does Rutgers, even though it's from halfway in the Midwest, in the middle of the country to the East Coast. I think Ohio State, even though it's a tough back-to-back road trip, I think they should be fine, especially with it being against Rutgers. Then they come back home against Michigan State. I think they have Michigan State's number right here. I think Michigan State, they're able to beat here. It's a night game. It's at home. I hate that it's a night game at home in November, but it is what it is. I think they should not have a problem with this Michigan State team this year, but I think we are a little bit underrating the potential talent that Michigan State has. I think this point in the season, Minnesota is going to be at their most dangerous. I think that PJ Fleck's got a little bit of a rebuilding year ahead of him for Minnesota, but this could be where they're hitting their stride, and it's the week before Michigan. Ohio State wins, but I think this one's real close, and it's sloppy. And this might be a game where Ohio State's flirting with that 20 mark. This might be a Northwestern-type game from last year. The only difference is they're going up against a slightly better team than that Northwestern team from last year. Finally, you guys might have already seen my Michigan preview, but a road game at Michigan. All right. I got to do this. I'm still wearing Ohio State, so don't worry. I'm not going to disrespect, rest in peace to Dwayne Haskins, not going to disrespect the Ohio State Buckeyes here when I talk about this. Look, here's the bottom line to all you Buckeye fans. Don't call me a fake fan, okay? This is me trying to balance my professionalism and my fanhood. My fan glasses are going to tell me, look at this secondary. They're going to be better. They have 8 scholarship corners now, and they're going to be really, really good. They made key additions. They're going to develop. I'm hearing great things from young players like Sonny Styles or CJ Hicks, and I'm hearing JTT and Jack Sawyer are ready to take a jump, and the interior is going to be dominant. That defense should be fine, and they only beat us on 5 big plays. Other than that, they had 1 offensive drive with a touchdown. Okay, I hear you. And then I also will hear you with, we have weapons. I don't care if Will Johnson takes away Marvin Harrison Jr. By this point, Carnell Tate's pretty much a sophomore, and Brandon Ennis could definitely play. And then, of course, you have Julian Fleming. You have Jaden Ballard. You have Emeka Egbuka. You have those tight ends that you already talked about. You've been patting them on the back. And I know the offensive line might be a little bit of a concern, but not this late in the season, right? Listen. All of that sounds good. I can easily talk myself into saying that Ohio State not only could beat Michigan, but win a national championship this year. And I think they very well could do that. I am not picking Ohio State to go into Ann Arbor and beat Michigan the way that Michigan has been able to handle Ohio State the last 2 years. Take off your fan glasses for a second, those of you Buckeye fans out there. Don't be coming and attacking me for this take, and recognize that, hey, this Michigan team has dominated us for 2 years in a row, and we should expect to beat Michigan, but we have to show it before we can really expect it, okay? You don't want to keep letting yourself down every single year the way Michigan fans really started to at the end of the Harbaugh. I mean, Harbaugh, a good football coach, they were talking about firing him between the years of 17, 18, and 19. Look back at 2019 on how Michigan did. Okay, they were a good team in 2019 with Shea Patterson and the guys that they had. And Ohio State ran them off the field in the Big House the last time Ohio State beat the Michigan Wolverines. And they wanted Harbaugh's head don't stoop to that level because they beat you a couple years in a row. And then the other thing, you shouldn't really at this point think right now, just as an independent fan, you can expect to beat Michigan at the end of the year, but you shouldn't be predicting to beat Michigan at the end of the year. You have to be saying, the expectation is beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, go to the playoff, compete for a national championship, or win it, right? That's the expectation at Ohio State. But when you are talking about this Michigan game, are you seriously going to look me in the eye and tell me with full confidence, we are going to beat Michigan? You can't. You just can't do that right now. And I'm not going to predict it. I hope I am wrong more than anybody that is going to comment fake fan or whatever, okay? I am the biggest Ohio State football fan that anybody that knows me knows, okay? I've gone to about 30 games in my short life so far. I'm only 22 years old. I go to every game that I possibly can go to with my family. It's a great bonding experience. I grew up bleeding scarlet and gray. This does not mean I'm a fake fan. This means that, hey, I have professionalism and I'm trying to see things the way that we need to see things. I have every reason to believe that Ohio State can and will beat everybody on the schedule except for Michigan. Until Ohio State shows me, okay, this isn't a changing of the guard. This is a 10-year war type of ordeal, or those 2 wins were a fluke. You win this year, you can be like, okay, either those 2 wins were just 2 off years for Ohio State, which is not what I think, by the way, or Michigan joined us, and this is going to be a back and forth battle where we win a couple years, they win a couple years, we win one, they win one type of thing. And it's back and forth for the next 10, 15, 20 years, okay? And I'd be okay with that. That's the stories I heard. And I appreciate the fact that Ohio State has been so dominant against Michigan in my life. But right now, I cannot pick Ohio State to beat Michigan because right now it seems like Michigan has passed the Ohio State Buckeyes. Would I play over 10.5 wins? The answer is no. I think 10-2 is definitely a possibility. The schedule is really, really tough. They play 6 home games, 6 away games. And out of those away games, you look at Notre Dame, at Purdue right before Penn State, at Wisconsin right after Penn State, at Michigan at the end of the year, not to mention Penn State, if they're able to come in the shoe and show off a big performance. The schedule's not easy. I think Ohio State should go 11-1, whether that loss is to Michigan or somebody else. I'd be very shocked if Ohio State goes undefeated, and I'd be way less shocked if they're 10-2 than undefeated. As much as I love Ohio State, as much as I think they're really talented, I think this team could potentially remind you of last year's Alabama team in a lot of ways, minus the fact that the weakness is not wide receiver. The weakness could be just offensive line. And they can't run the ball nearly as effectively as you may be accustomed to Ohio State running the ball. So, like I said, 11-1 for the Ohio State Buckeyes. And it breaks my heart to predict Michigan to beat Ohio State. But, hey, this is a challenge to you. I want this in the facilities. I know it's not going to get there because I'm just a small, little, tiny YouTuber at this moment trying to make something out of this. But put it in the facilities. Tell them, hey, even your own fans are not necessarily fully thinking that you're going to win that game. Prove me wrong. Please prove me wrong. I would really appreciate that. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Make sure you guys check out Georgia Tech coming tomorrow. Missouri coming tomorrow as well, hopefully. And with that being said, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.